right now. Welcome. This is Nuts. Today's Friday, May 29th, 2020. I just have to say this because I don't know. It's a little bit crazy. It's almost June, and I wanted to welcome everyone and apologize for this technical glitch. We're basically starting the webinar 15 minutes late. Sorry about this. We tried to do something fancy and bring another camera. It worked before, but it doesn't work right now. So I don't want to waste anyone's time, and I'm gonna try to do that next time because I really think it's very helpful to have a camera focusing on the work while I work. But for now, we're just gonna use one camera, and hopefully the view is gonna be okay. So the video is much better on Zoom than it was on the previous platform. What we loved about before was how clean it was and how the emails went out at the specific times. But we have a limitation of 2 hours and we need more time. 2 hours just fly by. So we're gonna be working on this until 1:15. And then after that, we'll do Q&A if anyone has any general questions. The chat works, everyone's muted, and everyone very kindly just stop the video as well. So this is recording, and I'm really excited about this assignment. I know that in the email that I sent yesterday, I was very precise with parameters, and some people just reached out with options and questions. I sent another email earlier for anyone who just signed up saying that you don't have to be by a wall. I just put an easel next to me, and then I'm just gonna work on this painting. This is a pastel painting original piece that we got in Long Beach Flea Market many years ago, and it's it's in our bedroom. And I was just asking people not to think of picking one of the pieces that you have based on how pretty it is or how valuable it is, but based basically on how it resonates with you during this time of isolation. So I know everyone is going to pools and gathering and all that stuff, which is super fine. But as far as we're concerned, we're still on isolation mode, and we're being very careful getting out there and going to the stores and stuff like that. So it's important to just make sure that don't fall into what other people are doing, and in regards of thinking that it's okay. So just keep your guards up, because this thing's still going around, and there's a lot of infections every day and all this stuff. But going back to painting, so anything in your house that resonates with you in the sense of giving you a different meaning during this time. And it's funny because I never thought of it until I read that article of the artist asking other people what the pieces around them meant to them. And so I took my time and I went around our home, and then I just looked at every painting and every object with different eyes. And I just discovered things. I just mostly discovered new feelings about pieces, and this piece resonates with me because it's a single person, a single individual, and there's no background, there's no context, and there's a sense of contemplation, reflection, and I just thought that resonated with me. I also added remarks today saying that you don't have to be by a wall. You can just bring photos of anything. You don't have to use a painting. If nothing resonates, you can use something printed on a book. I try to keep this personally within the constraints of my home environment, because I think that's conceptually what it means. But I know that some of you are using virtual rooms and viewing rooms from museums, and also sort of like finding pieces that resonate with you. And I ask if the museum could be local, just because I feel it's important after this ends and museums reopen. Perhaps it would be an interesting idea to go and see that piece that you did right now. I forgot to do one thing, and everyone's welcome to change the painting right now, because I forgot to mention that you can use one of your paintings and recreate it, one of your own paintings. And I almost did that, but then I just didn't want to just all of a sudden come up with something super different. So what I'm gonna do, I think I'm just gonna move this a little bit. I'm gonna make myself comfortable and see if you can, you guys see me. And I'm just gonna put the light right here. I think that's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm gonna keep taking photos. Now that my iPhone is free of my work, we're gonna sketch. I promise I can catch up. And then one of the things that I'm gonna ask Jen. Jen, hi, how are you, co-hoster?
Hi. I'm great. I'm happy it's Friday. We finally got our May gray. I don't know what it's like for you guys all over, but we woke up to gray skies for the first time all month. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are.
Wonderful. Yeah, so I was just saying, Jen, that if you have time, if you can find images of copyists going to museums and actually having the whole setup ready.
Sure.
Just a few, because I think, you know, the article was very interesting, but at the same time, it didn't talk about copyists, basically, a very, very old form of education that started in the 1700s when the Louvre basically opened up. And I feel, yeah, I feel like for many people, it has been a form of education. And I was mentioning that nothing beats seeing a painting for live. So I understand how people sign up for the program and wait months until they get granted a spot to go and paint. And it doesn't happen in all the museums, but there's still people who do it. I want to do it. I think it's interesting. It's the ultimate scary experience because you possibly have to stand there and other people are watching you. But at the same time, I just feel like there's something really, really nice about that. So I mentioned as well that copies, what they do, they basically try to recreate. We did this with a goldfinch. We learned so much about how recreation is not the same as replication. And so what I'm trying to do, or what I'll try to do, is to be as close as possible to the painting. And I know for sure that my style will kind of like go show up. So I'm not gonna be hard on myself. And yeah, but basically I know that that's not gonna be an exact replica, but the point is that I'm going to try to recreate. Yes, recreate. I like the word recreation because I feel like there's something authentic and original in creating again. So first things first, our format, I'm using 12 by 16. It's fairly large. If you're using something beyond 9 by 12, you guys consider that it's going to take a lot longer to basically finish. Let me see if I can close this. Yeah. Hold on one second. I'm just getting familiar with the windows. One of the things that I don't like about Zoom is like there are so many windows, but open. Never mind. Yeah. So my format is 12 by 16. I'm using cotton paper. Distinction between format and surface. The format of the painting is different. It's not the same, and it's not the same proportion. So that's going to be my first challenge. So I'm asking Jen to upload some of the photos because I notice that some people, when they do this, they're not necessarily interested in doing the entire painting. Some people just do a section of it, and it was a nice thing to see. So my point is that don't feel like you have to have the exact same format, meaning the size and proportions. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can place that figure on my painting in a way that has enough space around it. Always look for that interruption or that strange cropping or that squeezed against an edge, because I feel like sometimes we do it unconsciously, and yeah, and it could just feel a little bit strange and weird. So as usual, I'll just do my first silhouette, and I find out that I need to change things up. So I work by silhouette. I'm not doing any details. This is basically a gigantic potato shape. I know if you can basically see it. I know that this is too bright, but it's okay. Or maybe this. I'm just gonna change the light. Oh yeah. A little bit.
Yeah, it's a little blown out for us.
Yeah. So thanks. And then I'm just gonna lower. I'm gonna lower the light. I think I can do it. I think that's better. Yeah, I think that's a little better. Yeah. I'll take pictures as well as I go along, and then it just changes a little bit. Yeah, never mind. It just changes. Yeah, nah. I guess I just have to do this. I will try, you guys. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that sense, and I will try to help you with that as you do your.
That looks better, yeah, already.
Your transition from potato shape to something. Yeah, maybe it's this light. I'm just gonna lower this light. I guess, I don't know, we'll see. I don't know, it just flips back and forth. Well, this will be painted, so I hope that helps when we do that. Yeah. I can't, yeah. Can't control it. No, I don't know. It's okay. It's okay. I'm just gonna go about and take pictures and snapshots. I don't wanna, we'll sort out those things as we go forward. All right, so my potato shape is set, and then what I'm gonna do is I go over and basically start to polish a little bit those lines. So here's what I'm gonna try to do. I don't wanna make this an assignment about portraiture, because to be fair, anyone, we should expect anyone choosing different subject matters. So I'm gonna try to be a little bit generic in my articulation of steps without falling too specifically into anatomy or visual planes or landscape, because I'm assuming everyone's doing something differently. So what I'm doing is basically going from general to specific, and I did the basic shape outside. Silhouettes are great to help us arrange things within our format. So don't hesitate to spend time with that, because I think it's really important. So what I'm going to talk about is alignments, because I think this could be applied, alignments could be applied to anything that we do. So what's an alignment? An alignment basically, find 2 points on whatever you're doing, 2 points that are separated, and try to align them within either a vertical or a horizontal. So an alignment, it's a very specific or practical form of grid. So if we were to have a grid here, we would just basically use the vertical and horizontal lines of the grid to orient ourselves or navigate through the lines of the painting, basically. But we don't need a grid to use the same technique. We can just, I can just, for example, I can find 2 points on my painting that are aligned horizontally. This point right here, in my case, the eye, and the top of the ear. So I know that those 2 points are aligned. So what I do is I find an alignment within basically my sketch. So yeah. So constantly try to find alignments, vertical and horizontal alignments, because that's the way to give you a sense of how to organize the rest of the elements in the room. I mean, in the room, I call room, but in the format. Yeah, so we'll see. So potato shape, and then I go into inside of the potato shape and I try to do structural lines, lines that split up the potato shape into smaller areas. So whatever it is, think of the outside silhouette, the outline, and then try to split it into smaller areas. So but my eye not only goes back and forth from the painting to the sketch, but it's also constantly looking for relationships between different parts of basically the painting or whatever it is that you're recreating. So yeah, it's a step above just looking at something and replicating it. It's looking at something in relationship to something else in the painting. And that could be anything. It could be the distance between the silhouette and the edge. It could be a vertical alignment. It could be a horizontal alignment. I think I would just group them into these 3 categories. Things that are aligned vertically or horizontally, and distances between the main silhouette and the edges of the painting. So yeah. So one of the things that I think it's important or interesting or good with this sort of a copyist tradition, it's the fact that it doesn't use any tools to translate the image or to project the image, because there's something about that most artists don't use. The reality is that most people use one tool or another, a projector, grids, blowing up the image on a large piece of paper, tracing it, and everything, I feel everything is valid. So to me, what I find important and interesting in the copyist tradition is that it very much feels like live drawing, in the sense that there's something in front of us and then we cannot use any accessory tools to translate it. So going back to the educational aspect of it, I just think it's really good to do this once in a while. It's sort of like going on a tightrope without a net underneath. The net being something that we could use to support our lines. So even though it may feel uncomfortable and scary and you know, out of our comfort zone, I just think it's so good that we do it once in a while. It's so good. It's really going to benefit mostly our observational muscles. Because sometimes if you rely too much on tools to translate, you start losing the grip of what observation can do for us. And I've seen it. I've seen it in people. I see that some people rely on translating tools so much that at some point they basically stop interacting with a piece, and then you know, rely more on photographs, on translating things from a photograph using a tool. So I'm just going to bring this reference right now because I think it's very interesting. I just watched a documentary this week called The Painter and the Thief. The Painter and the Thief. I highly recommend it. And it's fascinating, and it's now streaming. And it's a story of a realist painter from Germany who lives and works, I think, in Norway. And she befriends the thief of one of her pieces. I mean, I highly recommend it. But anyhow, so there are scenes in her studio where she actually takes photographs of the thief and then translates them on the canvas. So anyhow, so it just made me think of that, because sometimes we see a painting and we are blown away by how realistic it may be, and then we don't know the process behind it. So I try never to judge a painting based on the skill level of the artist, because the truth is that we don't know. We don't know what tool they used. So for me, I try to stick with conceptual elements. I try to stick with basically the way it's painted, if it's not hyper realistic, rather than just analyzing only the skill level in regards to proportions and stuff. I think it's so overrated. So I'm going to do a few values, darker to lighter. You guys are in already and you signed up for this, and I love it. So that's why now I'm going to say this. There's nothing more complex than painting a painting. And we've done this before. And so it's not portraiture, it's not architectural stuff. We sort of like share how one subject might be more difficult than another subject. And I always say this, it's not that one thing it's more complicated or complex or it requires a different set of skills. Every subject matter it has the same amount of complexity. It's how we are not used to do it that makes it difficult. We're not used to do architectural stuff or portraiture. And then we find that it's more difficult. But in reality, it's just the same thing. Whether you do one single apple or if you try to do the Disney concert hall, I guess. But there's one subject that for me, I discovered it's more challenging than anything else. And it precisely is recreating a painting. So that's all. I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm just, now you're trapped. So I think the reason is because obviously what we have, it's someone's brushstrokes and someone's style, someone's color palette. So that it's impossible to replicate. So, oops. So what I find myself doing is trying to mimic everything. And in fact, I realized that if I do that, I spend way too much time trying to do that. So what I decided to do is do my best to basically get the structure and the bones, and then see how far I can go with color palette mostly, and perhaps brush strokes. So in that sense, I have so much respect for copyists. I know that it's not regarded as a highbrow activity. So this is basically my sketch. I'm going to stop right here before. Oh, and I should have taken a million pictures, but I'm just going to do that. And then Jen will post it. Yeah. So let me just do this. I'm just going to take a picture also of, oh, that's bad, but that's okay, of my image. Yeah. So I'm ready for the wash. I just stuck to my palette of neutrals and then pink and blue, and we'll see how that works. I said that I have a lot of respect for copyists being a painter, I just realized that it's not easy, and it's basically underrated, and yeah, and should be regarded as something. I mean, it is regarded, depending on who you talk to, it is regarded as something important. Uh, I'm just gonna mention or describe a memory. I'm gonna take like a minute break and then say this. My first encounter with uh, copyists was, and this is gonna sound pretentious, but I've been really fortunate and privileged to do a lot of traveling a few years ago, and mostly because Keon has been traveling for work a lot. And one of the perks of his job is that he racks up a lot of miles. And then at some point, I was able to take advantage of that. So we went to Thailand once. And so we ended up going to a small town, and then I don't know how, but I guess I was interested in the local art scene. I'm always interested in see what's going on when I visit something in that regard. And we discovered this workshop of dozens of people recreating, copying masterpieces, contemporary or old masters, dollies, things that you would think people would know and recognize and they would like to get in their homes. And I was shocked. I was like, this is so awful. But then I just realized that it just requires a lot of talent or skill to actually do that. Whatever it's a formula or not, I just feel like I have a lot of respect for people who do that. And then my second encounter is that one of Keon's pattern makers, in one of his jobs decades ago, he was an artist, and for Keon's birthday, what he did was he gave him a copy of The Kiss, Klimt's famous painting, and we have it in the house, and it's amazing. It's amazing. So I just find so much value on that. And my third and ultimate encounter with recreation is when we did the Goldfinch. I learned so much about recreation and the value of things and what really original means. So anyhow, this was a no-brainer for me when I saw the article. It was a no-brainer, just sort of like honoring that tradition anchored in education, and also just challenging ourselves to do something like that, in addition to finding that piece that talks to us during this time, and maybe we appreciate more than we did before. All right, so I'm just gonna start washing, and timing wise, I'm just checking it out, and then we are, okay, that's good. Yeah, so I'm gonna give myself, again, we started 15 minutes after because of all the problems, but I'm gonna give myself, I'm gonna try to see if in 15 minutes I can do the wash, and in another 15 minutes I can do the first notes. So then that'll be our first hour. So how do we approach a wash? Because I feel like now we feel tempted or pressure to actually match the color right now. So I'm gonna say, don't worry about it, because the first layer has a specific function. So we don't need to use the exact same colors right off the bat. So I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my neutrals, and I'm gonna do darker to lighter on my sketch. I'm gonna, my premise right now would be value. So for a second, I felt tempted, oh, I don't have that blue, or I don't have that beige or that pink. But then I realized that, I need to stick to the program. And the program is to do the wash first. And then when we get to that time when we can analyze the palette, then it'll be a different story. But for now, don't worry about color matching anything. Work by value, use your neutrals. That would be my advice. Squinting my eyes a lot to find out what is going on with lights and darks. And perhaps I'm starting to use some neutral lavender tones for darker areas on the skin. But yeah, be messy, untidy, chaotic. Shame is not an option. I feel like shame during the creative process, it's such a disruptive force. And I had to deal with it. And I know it's a work in progress, but how many decisions we don't make because we feel ashamed of the look of our painting. So I just was able to recognize it and just throw it out the door. There's no room to be ashamed when we create or paint. It's a toxic form that interferes with our process. So anyhow, I'm just saying this because during this stage, things start to feel a little bit discombobulated, and we feel like it looks very premature. And let's not forget, we are starting something from scratch, and then we have something that's finished. So naturally, our impulse, it will be to judge our stage in comparison of the final result. So that state of mind could, unless we rein it in, it could really interfere with our process. It could make things emotionally and psychologically difficult. So, and I'm sorry, but I think this is the case. I feel like most of the people or most of the classes or the instruction that I've seen don't tackle this issue. You know, it's just sort of like a step-by-step formula, and then basically you think like you can reapply that and go about it. And there's no mention or talk about how we feel about our process when we start doing it. And I feel for me, shame, being ashamed of what we're doing because it doesn't look like good enough, whatever good means, or if it's not proportionate enough, it's such a deterrent force. It could be really toxic. So my point is that be untidy and chaotic, and don't take this too seriously. The focus, this meaning these states, the focus or everything. I mean, seriously. The focus is to just wet the paper, seal the charcoal, get rid of the blankness of the page, and just get us a foundational layer. So, and try to find enjoyment in the process. There's so much struggle. It's really hard, but because we put so much on ourselves in regards of like wanting to make something that looks great. But yeah, no, that's really clarifying, right? Anyhow, I'm just basically blabbing away as I just finish or do my wash. I'm using light blue because that's a really specific tone. It's more turquoisey. I don't have turquoise, but I'll try to do something later. But again, a wash. The function of a wash is to help us transition from dry to wet in a very safe way that doesn't involve a lot of decisions. It doesn't involve a lot of specific elements. It's a very functional stage. It's a very foundational step or chapter. And I feel like sometimes they put way too much at stake with this. There's like, we feel like we're failing already, and this has nothing to do with results or looks or anything. It's very functional. wet the paper or wet the surface, and seal the charcoal. Get rid of the white, the stark white area of the surface. So yeah. So and what else? I'm gonna try to see if I can do a purplish note. I don't know, with yellow ochre and Payne's gray. I'm not able to, but that's okay. I'm just gonna do something darker, and then later I'll just go over it and see. Imagine for a second that we are in a museum by ourselves. I mean, I just can't imagine because I would be sweating bullets. And we are in a room full of Rembrandts, okay? Which to me, it's impossible a human painted that. I don't know, it just seems surreal. And then we have all our easels and stuff in front of it, lonely, alone, with a bunch of people just coming in and then looking at us. How would you feel? I would be petrified. I think there's something so psychological about that setup, that stage. And I feel I'm saying this because for me, it's important to live through the imagination, that setup, because if we are able to overcome that fear, then our painting will be much better. So that's basically my proposal. Just imagining by ourselves being there in front of an old masterpiece that probably took years to get finished or painted, and then just with our tools being there. So really scary, but ultimately a learning experience on how not to give or to consider that setup. I think that's really important. It happened to me the first time that I did plein air. I was completely petrified because I thought, on my own, by myself, people will judge me, and people have a certain expectation of what this should look like because it's very traditional. But then I just felt I was really nervous, but then I just felt liberated because it allowed me the opportunity to reflect on it and really start painting for myself and not for others. So if I would have never gone out and do that, I would have never felt the way I felt about painting. So sometimes we think we can empathize without actually feeling something or being present, but I feel like sometimes we have to put ourselves in that position to actually learn something. All right, so maybe this is my wash. That was pretty quick. So I'm just gonna go over a couple of areas and try not to overwork. And how am I doing this? I'm not being careful, and it's okay. And don't worry, you can wipe it, mess it up. And I'm just gonna send this. I'm done with my wash. I'm done with my wash. Here we go. Yeah, and try not to judge what it looks like or how close it is. This is an assignment to basically test our endurance and persistence, and also to learn from our sense of frustration. Yes, we can talk about technical stuff. This is where we are. That's what I'm using. I'm not trying to match. I'm going to try to go back and forth from the technical to the actual importance of this, because every painting teaches us something. And I feel sometimes the more we struggle with it, the more an opportunity for us to learn from it. It's happened to me. So I'm always open to see what the painting is going to teach me, the next painting. And I try not to be too hard on myself, and see to be a little bit more rational in finding out those things that will help me for the next painting. it's not the case for most painters. And yeah, I don't know. I just anyhow. Before going on tangents, I'm just looking back and forth. I know that I'm going to make a lot of modifications. I already see things that I haven't seen before. That's the purpose of slowing down at the very beginning, is to actually allow our observational capacity to find out changes in the things that we've done for the first hour or so. This is just a little nuts, this light and dark. I promise I will fix it, but anyhow, next time. So yeah, I'm just gonna get ready for my next stage, which would be first notes. And I think it's the right time for me to kind of like think moving from one to the next stage. Time management. I want to talk about this because obviously we have a different context. All of us that we are painting here, we have different situations in regards of like the setup and the time and schedules and things that we have to do and we're responsible for. So, but I want you to look at how you can manage the time that you block out during the process, because I think it's very important to learn to pick up the habit of managing your time. And to me, time management means setting up clear expectations. So it's not just learning to do something in 5 minutes and then something else in the next 5. So it's not about counting time, but it's about sort of like having expectations of what to do and what results to expect as I move forward. So I think it's something that's overlooked and it's very important. And you guys know yourselves better than anyone. So some of you will take the 2 hours to just do this charcoal and the wash. And as long as you're clear and honest with your time management, your expectations, and what you want to get out of it, then it's perfectly fine. Some of you will have 2 hours, 2.5, counting the Q&A and the critique to work on this, and that's it. So look at where you are right now. Look at how much time we have left and how much time you can count on after, if you can. Because I think that will give you a profile of the strategy that your painting needs, and every painting's different. So anyhow, so that's that. So that's why I said, I'm done with the wash and I'm ready for the next step. Bringing the words of David Hockney from last webinar, it takes years to keep it simple. It takes years to keep it simple. I'm just gonna write this somewhere and put it right next to my bed, because nothing sounds truer. So keep the wash simple, keep the sketch simple, don't overdo it, don't have high expectations, if I can say that. Move forward, dedicate enough time, but close the chapter and move to the next one. Don't leave a lot of can of worms open along the way, because they're gonna haunt you. We have to deal with the technique, and we have to deal with the ghosts that we summon, and the can of worms that we open, and the rabbit holes that we dig, not just the painting. All right, so medium brush, and I'm gonna start using the medium, and basically, yes, I'm gonna start using the medium, and then what? So regardless of what you're doing, the first notes basically are an opportunity to start resketching what we did. So to me, this is like a second chance to revisit my potato shapes, a second chance to basically go over what I just did. The specific definition of first notes is to block out color fields, not shapes, color fields with paint that has a little bit more consistency, so we create opacity. So we're not creating variations of value. We're not blending. We're not doing details. We're just like a mosaic or a stained glass window. We're just blocking out as flat as we can, not regarding the brushstroke direction, but basically maybe incorporating a little bit of color variations in the sense not of values, but in the sense of making that neutral tone a little bit more analogous. Analogous means harmonious, belonging to the same family. So I'm trying to make color that's raw amber. I'm trying to make color that's a little bit similar, and starting it to apply with the darker notes. And this is not coloring. I am applying this, but I keep going back and forth with my eyes because I want to reshape or mold what I have. It's not going to be what I have right now. It's not going to be the same. And this is something very important because I feel we may understand the concept, but it's hard to break the habit. And the habit is to keep the charcoal lines where they are and not move them a millimeter, and then just stir the paint within the confined or the parameters of those lines. It doesn't work this way. Observation builds onto itself, meaning we will see something now, but 10 minutes from now, we will have more visual information that will allow us to be more precise with what we've seen. So it compounds, it's exponential, it grows onto itself. So don't keep it fragmented. Fragmented means having the charcoal and you're done and the drawing stops there. Painting is drawing, which means then we will have to constantly mold and change those charcoal edges. So yeah, I'm applying color, but my brain is trying to multitask. And the different tasks that are on my brain right now are to build opacity, because I'm trying to sort of like build on what I have, but also resketch the edges that I may have. And I know I need to do that because by observational natural laws, perception laws, I know that I will see more now than I saw at the very beginning. All right, so yeah. And then, so I flicker my eyes back and forth. I'm applying the paint again. There's a sense of like this being a safe stage because I'm using the wash as tracing example. I know that I have something underneath, so I'm gonna use it as a guideline. But I'm not just retracing what I did. I'm going over and bringing new, fresh visual information that I'm gathering by looking at it again. So I feel like it's something that it takes time, because our natural impulse is just to fragment the process, separate drawing from painting. And it's something that I read, forgot the name of the book or when I read it, how art education, traditional art education, has put way too much emphasis on separating drawing and painting, two disciplines that have always been disassociated from each other. You learn drawing, and then you can move on to painting. And what that does, I don't know if that was right or not, is to also disassociate our brain in the sense of splitting up what drawing and painting is. So we feel like drawing it's one thing unto itself, and then it's separated from painting, and it's not the case. It's not the case. For me, the foundation of everything is drawing. Everything is drawing. So whether I'm using a wet medium or dry medium, but the concept is based on perception, observation, and translation. So that to me is the fundament of drawing. If you want to define something. So painting is something that builds on that, but it's not separated from it. It's not separated from it. So the way we approach painting is that we think the drawing chapter is closed. We're done with drawing. Okay, we were more successful or less successful based on whatever criteria we'll put, we sort of like decide to put ourselves under. And then we move on to painting, and then, you know, that's it. So we have to think of color and everything. Yes, in a way that's true, but at the same time, we're still drawing. Doesn't matter. I'm still drawing right now. I'm using wet medium, but I'm still drawing. All right, so I'm just gonna build some darker shades right here. I love the purple on the skin. I like this portrait chromatically and the way it's painted, because the skin, there's a lot of lavender and purple, and there's no green. Usually on portraits or in skin, I'm just gonna be super quick in case some of you are doing a portrait. The third notes would be lavenders or purples and greens. But this this portrait, there's no green in it. Green casts, I'm saying. Trying to just block out. And I'm also not very linear in my application. If you notice, I am not starting one point and departing from the point and expanding. I feel very non-committal. Non-committal? I don't know if that word exists, but in the sense of where I'm painting. I just paint a little bit here and I jump somewhere else. So I think that's also very important, because I want to build the entire painting at once, but it requires courage and being a little bit fearless. Why? Because it's very hard to leave an area, quote unquote, unfinished. We have the tendency to find solace and affirmation in finishing one thing on our painting to give us permission to move to another part of the painting. But with this, we have to learn to let go after you've done a few brush strokes, because other parts of the painting need our attention. So, yeah, I'm just gonna connect the computer because I disconnected, and I want to make sure that there's enough battery for whatever time. So I'm using the rag. I have a lot of solvent falling, dripping. That's okay. The rag takes care of it really easily. And maybe just kind of like smudge it a little bit as well. The rag is a great painting tool. Yeah, great painting tool. All right, so I also think the background is very blue. So meaning like the value, it's a little bit dark. So I'm gonna try to make a blue. Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna bring some green, maybe not now. Oh yeah, that's a good color. So I'm gonna draw the figure from the outside. So sometimes I'm an advocate for painting areas of the painting that seem not to be the focus. ground, background, things around positive space. So in that sense, I'm just going to make a distinction, a very basic distinction between positive space and negative space. So positive space is considered what's tangible in your representation, the objects that have a physical presence. Negative space is basically the space around it that it's not tangible and doesn't have a physical presence. So in my case, the positive space is the figure and the negative space is the background. So you've heard this probably many times, but the negative space, if not, let's just go over it. The negative space is as important for a painter as the positive space. So there are a lot of like important implications in working on your negative space. You will help develop the positive space. You create a nice framework for the positive space. So I feel like it's something that we relegate until the end of the painting process. And for whatever reason, let me just do a photo of this and then see if I can, yeah. Okay, yeah, like that. So I am a proponent and advocate to work on your negative spaces. They do so much more than we think. They're not just accessories or finishing touches or things that only embellish the final work. The opposite, they can just give you such a strong sense of development without even noticing it, Let me see if I can just explain that without even noticing it. My point is that it's a combination of both the positive space and the negative space that can actually help develop the painting. And we need to start learning how to shift away from positive space work and development and find balance between positive space and negative space. The idea is to find balance. So we have the sense that our work will only develop if we cumulatively add strokes on the positive space. We have, and it's a habit, and it's something that we acquired, each one of us, at different points on our lives, based on whoever we painted with. If we want to advance the painting, we have to cumulatively add work to the positive space. Well, it's not that simple, and it doesn't work that way in my experience. You have to balance your work between the positive space and the negative space, because the negative space can give you so much. That idea of keeping it simple. One of the things that will help you keep things simple is you can find a balance between those main categories in your painting. Because we have the tendency to end up overworking the positive space way too much. And then having many versions of the painting layered one on top of the other on that positive space. Learn to let go, learn to pause and stop and pull away. I will say this, there's no magic trick here. There's no talent. There's no sort of like a gift from the gods. It's about how you balance things, how you measure things, how you avoid overworking things. that will help you build the whole thing all at once. And it's okay, you know, it's okay. Unfortunately, so the people that we created with, so they had a different set of rules for painting or drawing. And I feel our job is to just revisit those rules and make our own rules. Just basically, an example, I know that this is pretty close from the last photo, but this is an example of what a simple application of a simple application of negative space can do for you. And yeah, it's not too bad. So 12, 14, I'm just here to pace our steps or our time. It's basically the first hour in. And I would say I probably still need a bit more first note work. I need to bring more colors. So I'm gonna take a little pause and see. I'm gonna bring some. If you don't have it, that's okay. Ultramarine blue, maybe cobalt blue. I feel like the difference between ultramarine and cobalt. So maybe Jen, you can also make a note for later if you want to just bring a couple of photos or upload a photo of the blues. That would be great. If you go to Gamblin and then just take a snapshot of the blues, so we can talk about.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, because I think it's going to be really helpful.
Absolutely.
There's a difference, and there are things that you can do with cobalt that you cannot do with ultramarine. So our goal is not to find out exactly what the palette the painters had. I can tell you right now that they didn't have all those fancy colors that we have right now. As a side story, oh my gosh, that's, you know, I should be focusing on something else. But as a side story, so we painted at the Forest Lawn Museum or Forest Lawn in Glendale, not just the museum, or not the museum really. We painted in the different locations. And one of the most spectacular locations is the Hall of Crucifixion and whatever. It's like a massive religious painting that's 100, almost 200 feet long. And in that hall, there is a palette. There's a palette. And it's the palette of the painter that he used to paint the painting. So it looks amazing because you think, oh my God, you find the historical significance of having the palette of the painter that he held and he used. So there's an emotional connection. But from a painter's point of view, it's interesting to see the simplicity actually of the palette. So maybe Jen, if you are not super busy doing all those things that take so much time, if you want to find a palette from a well-known artist, I don't know if you're going to find the palette of the guy who painted the Forest Lawn thing, but if you
I
can
have
find
it in my photos. I think I have the palette in my photos.
oh
I'll look. I'm not promising.
yeah.
If not, I'll find another for sure.
It would be nice for us as painters later when we do the Q&A to actually see what a painter's palette look like from a traditional point of view and how many colors. I don't think they had all these amazing colors that we have right now that we can buy. So let's take a look later, but I think it would be interesting. Yeah, so our work is not to really find out, inspect and sort of like, I forgot those TV shows like Bones, where people find who committed a crime by investigating whatever thing was left in the scene, and forensic. We don't have to be or have a forensic eye right now to analyze exactly what color we think that painter used for that blue. But at the same time, having a sort of like a general idea of certain colors will help us. So for me, knowing, especially with blue, and in that sense, possibly with green, what we talked about last week, the main distinction between ultramarine and cobalt, I feel like will give us a sense of exactly what blue is in that painting. So it could be helpful. So I'm gonna basically just bring some, I wanna see what kind of blues I have. So I'm gonna take a little break. Yeah, I have 3 blues. I have this fancy radiant turquoise. So this is a great color to have if you want to have like turquoisey notes. I have ultramarine, that's a standard blue. And then also, this is really bad because it's really worn out, but I have this cobalt blue. So it's a little bit lighter than the ultramarine. It's really old. We can talk about it if you guys want to do some color shopping. I encourage people to do color shopping. I encourage I encourage us to build our own paint library. I think it's important. It's fun. So once in a while, when you are in the mood for shopping, just consider, getting colors, getting paint, even if you think you don't need them. But I've been trying to add notes and colors to my palette because I feel like I see the palette as a library, as a color library, as a paint library. So I always try to incorporate new fun colors that are out there or that I see. Oh yeah, so okay, so I'm just gonna use the little bit of cobalt that I may have, and I'm gonna go for my second notes in a second. My second notes, yeah. And I'm just gonna give this a try because I wanna find out, you guys, while you work on this, I wanna find out if I can share the screen. I'm gonna give it a try and see if that's something that maybe it allows me to do it right now. So, I don't know. Maybe there was something about the connection or something about, I don't know. Let me see if I can, no, it kind of like stops. Oh, well, yeah. Jen, you can see my bed, right?
Yes. Now I see your painting. Yep.
Okay, so it just freezes, but the idea, and you see my face at the same time, right?
Yes, I see your face in my corner. And I see that you've put your camera on landscape, but it still looks portrait for us.
Yeah.
It's frozen.
So I think that's what we're trying. I don't know why this is happening, but what we're trying to do is to have 2 cameras, and it worked, and for some reason it's not working. It just freezes. So bad, because it would be so helpful for us to, we'll find out next time, but it would be so helpful to have like the phone as an accessory camera, so we can just show you up close all the details.
Sure,
but
yeah.
It's not working. So as you can see, something's up with it. Something is up with it. I don't know if it's my phone or what. So anyhow, so I'm just gonna continue, and we're gonna do now second notes. The difference that happens right now, the difference that happens, possibly it happened already, but I didn't articulate it. Maybe I did. I used the medium. Yes, I used the medium. Maybe I didn't say it, but I used the medium instead of the solvent. We use 2 liquids. One's the solvent, one's the medium. And going over really quickly as an sort of like general idea of how to approach oil. With oil, you use paint and 3 liquids that are your accessory to oil. One is the solvent, which is mineral spirit based. One is the medium, which is resin based, basically chemical. And then another one is the oil, so natural. And it just depends on which one you want to paint with. You can do a painting just with the solvent. You can do a painting using the solvent and the medium, or the solvent and the oil. And I feel like for single sessions that I want things to sort of like work fast and be able to layer things on top of each other, the medium works better for me than the oil. But I just want to say that you can use oil as well with the mineral spirits. So anyhow, so I'm using the medium right now, and I'm using a solvent-free medium, and we can just add that to the references. A solvent-free that it's non-toxic. This one is non-toxic, and it just feels like oil. It's sort of like oily, and it has a sort of like an average drying point, so it's not too fast or too slow. And some of you, I know that you guys got the kit, the Roofless kit, and you got Gall kit. Gall kit is a different kind of medium that speeds up the drying. So it's really helpful if you want to treat oil almost as acrylic, because it's not super fast, but the layers in like 5, 10, 20 minutes, they set, and then you can paint over that. Okay, so perfect timing. Yeah, we have 1 hour, so I need more medium. And so if you want, you guys, because we talked about how to do the session better for you guys, if you want to take a picture of your work now, midway, and upload it, what we're going to try to do is when we finish the Q&A or when we finish the session, we'll give us 5 minutes, a 5-minute break, because we can organize all your photos into groups. So that way we don't have to jump back and forth from the beginning and the end. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a photo of your process right now and then another one at the end. So in that way we can just we can incorporate that later when we talk about your specific process. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah. So I'm just gonna use the medium brush, and then what am I doing right now? So I am gonna use a different brush, same medium brush, but a little bit smaller. And then I'm just gonna repeat what I just did with first notes. And this time, what I'm gonna do, squinting my eyes, this time what I'm gonna do is try to bring different values within the same color. Everything I do is based on visual perception, which means that I still have to constantly flicker my eyes back and forth. But this time, I'm concentrated on the hair, okay? So the hair, before I did raw umber, one single field, color field. But right now, what I'm doing with the second notes, I'm going on the hair and I'm reapplying another layer with more paint and less medium, because I want to build the opacity of that area. But the difference between now and the first notes is that I'm going from darker to lighter within the same color field. So I'm not adding any new color. Maybe I'll just create a variation of the tone. But the concept of the second note is to stay within that color and then create lighter and darker versions of that color. So, and by the way, the idea of drawing doesn't stop. So I'm still, I'm doing this, I'm applying the strokes, the darker ones first, but at the same time, if I see something that may be slightly different in shape or with the edge, I go over and I adjust it. I'm gonna do a lighter version right now. I try to be as disciplined, I guess, as possible in that sense. Because if I don't have a structure, I'm going to start adding colors for the sake of it. And then I'm going to turn this into like a decorating session. I have to be specific on what I want to do and why I'm doing it. So that's why it helps for me to just be specific about the stage that I'm at. I'm doing second notes, darker to lighter. And I'm not going to spend too much time. I know that this will not be finished, but you can notice the slight variation from darker to lighter on the hair. And then I'm going to move to a different area. So the idea is not to try to finish this to perfection. And then in order for us to have the permission to go somewhere else. I'm building this one step at a time. And this step, it's a little bit more specific than the first notes, but it's not meant to be the be all and end all. I don't know if I'm using this expression correctly, of the process or the strategy here. So the piece that I'm working or that I used, it's pastel. It's chalk pastel. So obviously, there's some areas that feel, the stroke feels very dry. So I'm going to try, and I'm using a different medium, obviously. I'm going to try to just bring that with lighter touches. Also, a good idea would be to find out where your edges, what your edges look like. Sometimes we have a tendency of creating the same edge, what I call edge quality. Edge quality is basically how hard it is. Yeah, I would say how hard it is, or how interrupted, or how much contrast there is, how smudged or soft or diffused or unfocused. All this are different edge qualities. And sometimes we just use one hard edge, and that's it. So now I'm just looking at this and I'm trying to find out what edge quality that color field has. Because there are some areas where the edge quality may be harder, and some where it may feel like it's disintegrating. So the time to do that is now. And at the same time, I'm just basically, I'm gonna cheat. You guys, I'm gonna cheat and use turquoise. Yeah, I'm not perfect. This color is radiant turquoise, and Gambling has a range of colors that they call radiant. Radiant red, radiant blue, radiant turquoise, and radiant violet, I think. These are very high, it's called high key colors that are very pastel like. So I love that, we love that range. We didn't have it at the beginning, and then we started with the radiant red, and then we just moved to the radiant blue, and those two colors now are a staple in our palette. So notice that I just did some work here, and then I just jumped down below. So I feel I'm gonna force myself or encourage myself to go on the upper part and try to complement my work on the positive space with some work on the negative space around it. And that has to do with basically drawing. I feel like this is a little bit of ecru. Sometimes before adding white to a color, I try to find out what alternative to white I could bring before I add white. Because white could really alter the hue when you mix it with a color. So I just feel like a little bit of this ecru, just like an off-white linen color, gives me a much more dynamic and interesting value. Maybe a little bit of white right now. And I'm trying to lighten this up. So this is a good opportunity to talk about non-conforming brushstrokes, because not only we're just building more opacity, we're just building lighter and darker versions of the color. We're taking care of the edge quality. Those are three elements that I just incorporated basically. But yeah, there's one more. It's the brushstroke direction. Brushstroke direction. So I find myself right now conforming my strokes. Look, I'm just doing this long brushstroke around it, long brushstroke. But what that creates is a very hard edge, and also it rounds off things too much. So what I'm gonna try to do is to break up that direction and make sure that I don't conform it with the silhouette. So I just want that edge to be to feel a little bit more torn, in the sense that it's not perfectly cut. Maybe I'll just go back inside and then sort of like brush a little bit along the edge, so it doesn't feel it's conforming, yeah, perfectly. What's the problem with conforming brushstrokes? I mean, there's first of all, there's no problem, but I feel like it's a tool that we need to be very specific and intentional if we want to use it or not. Because if we only use conforming brushstrokes, if we only paint by retracing the silhouette, everything will feel very compartmentalized and very sort of like cut and paste. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not good or bad. Conforming brushstrokes are not bad, but abusing the conforming brushstrokes will give us something that may not be desirable, or I don't know. All right, so I think that could be, I need to work a little bit on this sideburn because it's very hard right here. So I'm just gonna bring a little bit of notes. And then the edge quality here is different. So I'm gonna bring some lavender notes. Yeah. And then I'm gonna try to create an edge that is a little less structural, hard, fragmented, or broken. So yeah, and that's the work that pertains to the edge quality sort of like category. It's not just matching a tone or a value. It's working on the edge quality that is important. So we create some dynamic elements, so not everything feels completely encapsulated or fragmented. Let me just take a picture and see if that makes sense of what I did. I just basically worked on second notes. This was work on second notes on the hair and working on also the background and some edge quality. Yeah, and I feel like it just develops a little bit further, just a little bit further. We need to learn. We need to learn to let go. We need to learn to sort of like pause and go somewhere else, because it's so easy to go down rabbit holes along the way. Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna stop right now and see how I'm gonna approach the rest. There's a darker note on this part of the painting. Maybe I'll do that to sort of like frame the neck, but I feel I wanna give a little bit of attention to the eye and the nostril. So you decide on your painting what area you want to develop. You'll have to consider a couple of things. Number one, how dark, what are the dark points in your painting? And then at the same time, what you want to develop in the painting. So it could be, hopefully it could be just the same thing. So then you could take advantage of the fact that one area is dark and you want to actually feature it. But sometimes you have to decide one or the other. So for me, this made sense doing the dark for one strong reason. It's the fact that I feel developing darks on a painting really become like anchor points visually. So they really sort of like set a very specific strong place where things can hang visually. And then from that point, I could expand around the areas around it. But the darker areas on the painting for me become the structural foundation for the rest of the values. So now that I have this super dark, I feel like this is a good example of anchoring that spot. And then I'm just gonna work on this area right here of the eyes as an adjacent area to the dark. It's gonna help me draw things better. It's just gonna help me find relationships better. So darker to lighter, it's not only efficient and traditional and academic, there's a reason for it. And for me, the reason is not just to order the values, but also to find graphic anchor points. All right, so yeah, here I'm just gonna, again, retrace it, darker to lighter. Yeah. And then I need to work on the lighter area, so line quality or edge quality. So on the eyebrow, we have a tendency, I mean, I'm being specific briefly on portraiture. We make the eyebrows way too uniform in opacity. So I'm just gonna try to break that up here. And then work on the temple. So this is a good example of why anchoring your darks is a good idea, because right now I have a better grasp of the connection between both areas of the painting just because I anchored one. So this can help you actually be more, recalibrate the rest of the painting, find the areas that you actually want to readjust or shift. So yeah, darker to lighter, it's a good idea. So a little darker here. Constantly flickering my eyes back and forth. I'm gonna bring some white to create some chalkiness and see if I can just lay those light brush strokes on top. And then I think that's good. I'm basically using highlights right now or lighter areas. I placed the dark notes. Let me take a picture of the eye. I place the dark notes And then I just, I'm building some strokes around the dark notes. I mean, if you can see a little bit of development, yeah. Yeah, it's okay. So notice that sometimes I see, it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. But on social media, and I don't really know what the purpose of it is. And if you've done it, you are forgiven. But I see the time lapse, a time lapse of like maybe 3 hours reduced to 60 seconds. I think it's bonkers. But let's analyze a little bit the positive aspect of that, because it gives us an idea of how people build things in a painting. And if you notice, when there's a time lapse of a large or a long span of time reduced to 60 seconds or less, you could see that there is a progress between bold, big areas to slowly polish tiny things. So I'm bringing this up because at this stage, I'm just adding some pixelated brushstrokes, but I'm not going in and doing super details yet. So I need to do that a little bit later when the rest gets built. So yeah, time lapse, bad, but going from broad to specific and being democratic between different parts of the painting, good. Um, so I'm just gonna try to work on the nostril. I'm gonna leave the eye alone. And again, the idea of letting go an area because before it becomes troubled. Why do we end up working on something and then we insist until we feel that that area has become a troubled area? Has it become a troubled area because it's complicated? Or has it become a troubled area because we've been fidgeting and messing with it too much? I don't know. It's an open-ended question. Personally, for me, it becomes a trouble area when I try too hard and I try too much to do something. And then I just go down the rabbit hole. And then I feel like the area is giving me trouble when in fact I've just overworked it. Um, so my suggestion, yeah, it's to learn to let go, pull back, and go somewhere else. We will be able to go back there and develop it further. We don't have to find validation to continue in finishing one section of the painting before moving to something else. Who said that? Who, in what book? What rule is that? What commandment is it? Nobody mentions that. We have it in our minds, you know, that we have to do that. But so another way that uh, another way that makes going from darker to lighter better is the fact that right now I'm just going to do the nostrils and I'm going to link these three pieces together. The darker as a major anchor point. This allowed me to build it, always looking at this reference. And right now I'm going to go to the nostril, and I'm going to build the nostril in reference to this. So I'm basically going one step at a time, but always finding a dark area that I can find as a reference point for my drawing component, basically. So anyhow, so yeah, that's that. And we're good. Yeah, we have half an hour. We're good. So I'm looking at alignments right now. So I'm making 2 points. In my case, in my painting, the tear duct and the nostril. And I didn't make that alignment when I did the sketch or when I did the wash. I didn't. But now I'm ready to find out if that's aligned or not. So I realized that there's no alignment. And in my painting, it's almost aligned. So I have to move the nostril a little bit to the left. So I'm wiping this off and I'm going to rebuild it. So this is a little bit to the left. Yeah, and the nostril is a little bit to the left as well. Okay, I think that's gonna be better. So I did the darker areas, found new alignments, discovered opportunities that I didn't have before in order to develop the drawing. Every time I make a new color sample, I use a different part of the palette. Yeah, and then I'm gonna bring some lighter notes to see if I can draw, because there's a sense of the nostril being, yeah. Okay, I think that helped. Yeah, I think that certainly kind of like helped. Just the eyes and the nose. But I had to reshift. I have to, let me see. I had to shift. Hold on 1 second, something. Oh. Yeah, is that me? No. Okay, sorry. Okay, never mind. Sorry, there was something going on. Yeah, I just had to reshift the drawing component of it. So I think that kind of like helped. But just to show you that I expect this. I expect things in my painting to look radically different. And I don't base my success or failure in how many things I had on the painting that unexpectedly change. This does not define how successful or unsuccessful I am with the process. The difference is that I am expecting to see things differently. I am prepared and ready to make changes when that happens. And I am anticipating it because I know it's going to help me build a better, stronger, more well-integrated connection between the elements. So my advice would be for us, all of us, to learn to pick up the habit to be open-minded when something unexpectedly reveals itself on a painting, and it just tells us that it needs attention. We immediately go down the rabbit hole of like judging ourselves and saying, oh my gosh, I didn't see this before, it's just a mess, it doesn't work, and I'm just a failure, I might have stopped, this is my worst subject matter. We have a tendency to try to justify our frustration by blaming on something outside of us, which is fine, you know. We could say, I hate this brush, or I never liked portraits, or this is not working for me, and you know, I always failed. But I'm inviting you to reconsider that and recan it and recycle it and think a little bit more of an opportunity to see how can I build on that feeling that I have right now, that something's not working out. So revisit it, try to rebuild it again. I mean, that always works. With oil, it just gives us the opportunity to just redo it again, maybe. So I just wiped it off and then redid it again, and I realized that I have a better relationship. But always be open and prepared to for that to happen. If it doesn't happen, we will not grow as painters. And I see it all the time, not in us, but I see painters that they are very much formulaic, and then setting a specific path, and then they're not letting other things challenge themselves. All right, so I think that was part of my strategy. And then what else? So I think I'm gonna have to and talk about the perfect example of what I just said. Mouths. Something about mouths they're more difficult part of the facial features, and also full profiles are the most challenging uh, positions of a face. I was perfectly aware of that when I chose this, but I didn't let that thought stop me from doing this. So maybe I'll just use a small brush. And I am imagining myself, again, this is a good exercise for me, that I'm in the museum, surrounded by a bunch of people looking at me. And I think for me, that's a good exercise because it just allows me to conquer my fears about what this is going to look like and how I would feel. I mean, it's not going to be the same, obviously, but it's a good exercise because what if I quote unquote fail? How am I going to feel? So my feelings obviously would be amplified if I feel like there's an audience in front of me and I am painting one of those classical masterpieces from life. So my first attempt at the lips, I feel like they're a little bit too small. So I'm just gonna go over them. Let me just find the alignment. I didn't check that. So the alignment is here. I think the alignment is okay. I'm gonna, what is it? Squint my eyes. And see what I can work with here. Usually I'm anchoring my, my work on the darks. Yeah. Making new color. Staying calm helps. And feeling like I'm not gambling things away. So it's okay. It's okay if I do a first try and things look a little bit different. I'm gonna now, what I'll do is I'm gonna work on the negative space. Because I know by experience that you have to find a balance between both. It doesn't work when you just prioritize one over the other. It's a slippery slope. It's a can of worms. Work on the negative space. And then, so I'm here, I'm working on negative space and see how I can do this. I know I can integrate the nostril or the nose, the profile of the nose. It's going to help me just build the profile of the lips. So I'm carrying that upward. I'm going to bring some lighter notes outside to fade the lip so it doesn't feel like it's too painted. And that falls into the category of edge quality. So I forgot, I know that there were 4 categories that I'm basically taking care of. I know that there were the color value, it was the edge quality, it was the conforming brushstroke or not, and I'll just remember the 4th one. But I know that those 4 things were part of my criteria when I would just try to develop something a little bit further. It'll come to me. And Jen, I think if you can, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that the COPYIST program started at the Louvre.
Oh
Can
my
you give
gosh, Julio, you and I are so connected. I'm literally posting something right now on our notes about the copyist program at the Met. I literally just hit copy and paste. Ah! Excuse me. It started in 1872 at the Met, and you can apply to go and take this class. But okay, you're talking about the Louvre.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that one was in America. I think that was the first COPYIST program in America. I'm not sure, but
Mhm.
yeah,
I think
late
so too.
1800s.
Yes, yes.
But I think the first one was actually the Louvre. So I don't know if you can find out when the Louvre started. I mean,
Sure.
when it was. I mean, I know that it was built like before, but as a museum.
Yes. I will look at it. There's you'll see once you dive into the shared album, but there's amazing pictures and sketches of people doing this from the 1800s in I think the Louvre. And yeah, I found some really great fun stuff and some really amazing artist palettes too.
Oh, good.
They're so cool. And then I copied the link onto our notes too, so you guys could see all of them because I just actually posted a few, believe it or not. Okay, I'm going to go look this up.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna take a picture of the lips, but I'm gonna basically say this. I have to learn to let go. So sometimes the areas that give us like more trouble, we feel like we want, we try to tame them. It's a matter of pride. Uh, I should apply this to myself, obviously, but at least for me, it's a matter of pride. Sometimes the line is really blurry in regards of like, are we doing this because we think it's going to be better, or are we doing it because you know, our pride is invested in it? And you'd be surprised, most of the time we're like, you know what, um, again, going back to that idea of being in the museum by ourselves, surrounded by people, I know that most of my decisions would be based on pride. And for me, pride would be trying to prove that I can do this. So I have to recognize that feeling and that mode, because that's never a good way to sort of go about it. So the best way that I can describe this is that once that happens, pull out, um, go somewhere else. You'll be able to build on something there. Don't worry about what it looks like. It's okay. There's no expectation here. And so I feel like that's what I'm gonna do right now. So I'm gonna leave I'm gonna leave, we have time. Yeah, we have like 15 minutes. That's plenty of time. I'll probably, I'm analyzing this, and I feel like drawing wise, I'm still going to try to redraw the chin, or I'm going to redraw the chin. Let's kind of like mention it like that. I'm using white because I feel like that would be really helpful. And then I'm going to use the negative space. I'm not even going to do a lot of blending inside, but I'm going to use the negative space and kind of like cut it. Yeah, I think that helps. So that's a good example of how just using the paint to draw, and then using the negative space basically to reshape could be a good idea. Yeah, I think that's good. So I think I'm just gonna do this. Okay, good. And then I have this. I think I'm gonna go to the shirt and the garments. I think, and that's gonna be the rest of my session. Maybe like the ear. I feel like yeah, let's not overlook that. Ears are weird, and they feel like so unpretty. I don't know. I just feel like it's always the last thing I do on a portrait. And I'm talking about portraiture. I know that everyone's using different subject matters. I'm assuming that's the case. But ears are, yeah, they're not pretty. I'm not a, I don't have an ear fetish. So I don't find ears necessarily attractive. I mean, I like the shape and everything, but the inside of the ear, it just feels. But hey, there's an opportunity and a lesson there to maybe just reconsider um, that sort of like beautiful, almost like seashell-like quality in ears. And I know that, you know, there's a specific order from darker to lighter, but I know myself, and I never overdevelop them. I just use them as an accessory, basically. But I'm gonna encourage myself or force myself to go over. I'm looking for alignments. If you have ears, how are they aligned horizontally? Bottom of the ear, top of the ear. That's the best way that you can integrate something with the rest of the painting. And as the tightness of your integration congeals, then it's easier to sort of like bring in something to what you have already done. So I have the nose, the eyes, and the hair. So I'm gonna bring the ear, but I'm not just gonna, what I was doing, I was just painting the ear as I was seeing it. And then I caught myself, I'm like, no, that's starting the house from the roof. I have to first find out what the top of the ear looks like, aligned with what I've already worked on. Because if I don't look at that, my ear, it's going to have a Frankensteinian component in the painting. It's not going to be integrated. So I'm going to stop doing what I was doing, and then I'm just going to find out the top of the ear, and I have my ear is way too high. It's way too high. So I'm better off taking care of that right now. Just going to wipe off what I did. And I'm going to set the parameters of that ear, and then I'm going to go to the highs and lows inside it. And the bottom of the ear is aligned with the mouth. So my ear is way too small on my portrait. There's no way I caught that at the beginning. I was like not looking at that. I'm seeing it right now because I'm using alignment as a tool to set things up, to bring the puzzle piece that really fits here, and not just try to squeeze something in and force it by just doing the ear and then hoping that that's going to work. And then finding myself at the end of the process with an ear that belongs to a painting and a face that belongs to a different painting. It happens all the time. So I'm glad I stopped myself and I just redid this. Yeah. It looks awfully big, but I'm just gonna trust my alignment. And then once I have this, I will just bring the darker elements inside a little bit. So I think I'm just gonna work on the ear instead of like doing the neckline or anything like that. Yeah. Let's I'm gonna be honest with my explanation of things and my actual application of things. It's good to talk about it and put it into practice. So then it would be a good example of my thought process, my decision-making process. So now I'm drawing. I set up the parameters and I'm drawing inside. And I realized that maybe this is a little bit different right now. That's okay. That's okay. I'm just gonna bring the lighter notes. And then we'll see what happens. I should probably stop and make an assessment. Yeah, I mean, this looks like super big, but I will work on it. I will work on it. I'm telling you this. We should do a session where it would never happen, but I would love to paint in a museum, but with you guys. So then I wouldn't feel as terrified. So it will be interesting to do all the same painting while someone is being at the museum and doing it. Because I'm not sure about doing this alone. So I'm looking at the structure and see the highs and lows. Yeah, I made my decision. I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna do the ear. I'm gonna stay with the ear for the rest of the time. That's it. I'm gonna challenge myself. I'm gonna see what kind of opportunities I have to learn from this. So I'm just gonna bring some darker notes. I'm testing the colors, by the way. So I do some colors on the palette and then I just basically test and see against it, because otherwise everything will feel random. I know by experience that making a color on the palette doesn't mean matching it. All the time I try to make a color and then I have to compare it. Flickering your eyes back and forth. This is a workout, an observational workout, you guys. Observational workout. That's what it is. So we're kind of like flexing, stretching our observational muscles. Figuratively speaking, obviously, but basically our observational muscles, if there's such a thing, would be located in our brain. So we are making our brain work right now by looking at something and then trying to identify something in what we're looking, so we can replicate it with our hand. So that's all a mental process, or not all, but it's very much focused on brainy stuff. All right, so patience, persistence, don't give up. It's okay if this looks something different, but what matters is that we continue moving forward. So, whoops. Okay, I'm gonna soften. We have time. We have 2 minutes. Okay, well, I'm just gonna extend a little bit of time. And I'm gonna tell you guys while I work on this, if you think it's a good idea, I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna do. Because we can do something here that basically we couldn't do before. I'm gonna take a picture of this and then soften this. Yeah, so that's not a bad ear. I'm happy about my ear. Oh, it's not too bad. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is this. I'm proposing this, you guys. Yeah, I'm proposing this. So we're gonna take a break. It's 2 hours. It's 1:15. If you think it's a good idea, we're gonna take a break of five minutes, and this is how we're gonna do. We're gonna stop the recording because we can pause. We can pause the recording. We can give ourselves like 5 minutes, and during these 5 minutes, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the folder and I'm gonna organize all the photos. So proposition right now, take a picture of or a snapshot if you want, obviously, of what you have right now. You can upload it if you want, or you can send it to Jen. Let's give ourselves 5 minutes or so we can just do a little bit of flexing. I'm gonna pause the recording, and then in 5 minutes, we're just gonna start recording again, and then we'll go over whatever we have, questions and all that stuff. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna pause this right now, the recording. It's recording right now, so welcome back. I hope you guys are here. Yeah, we have a ton of people here. My goodness, thanks for sticking with us. And then let me just share the screen. Hold on one second. I'm gonna share the screen in 1 second. And then we can just go over the details. Here we go. All right, so perfect. And then I'm just gonna go from the last one to the first one, basically. And this is Julie, amazing, incredible. I don't know, I need to find out what the image reference is, but let me just put this, and then actually I can do something. Julie, I just unmuted you if you're there.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. So.
Headphones, you guys, sorry.
No, it's okay. So tell us, I mean, is that a painting or?
It's a print from an artist who I like a lot, and he does a lot of stuff in California, and I've been trying to capture something similar. We have a vineyard right near us. This is from a vineyard in Napa, and his name's Johnson. First name, I can't even remember right now. I have to look it up. But I like it that he has all this action. So his is really great. It's so hard to do. Oh my God.
Is this the work? Is this his work?
This is his work.
Or that's yours?
No, that's his.
Oh,
he has that, like, I never got this green in, that brilliant green in the middle. Isn't it beautiful? Wow. I just love all the people and all the motion. And
I feel I should know this painter. So can you just?
Yeah, let me just go find. I wrote down his name, but I just went out of my studio, my garage studio.
Well, listen, this looks amazing, and it's so unexpected, Julie. I just feel like it's so interesting, the actual snapshot. I'm fascinated also by the original work, but I think you did. To me, this looked like the actual original painting that you were working on.
Mitchell Johnson. It's Mitchell Johnson. I can never remember his first name.
Okay. Well, I need to add him to my list of painters because this is outstanding. Yeah, love the color, the composition. I love the white shirt of the guy. I think it's really nice that you capture the cast shadow. This guy on the back is amazing. So let me see if I can just make my pointer a little bit larger. So you guys
I can see it. It's fine. We can see it.
Yeah, once, yeah,
Yeah.
let me just, because I think that's gonna be a little bit better. Display. Here we go. Yeah, so I love this guy in the background. I think it's just amazing. So, and you're working on canvas, so you'll have to add more paint because the canvas requires more paint. Love how colorful it is. So I think this is very Julie. I mean, the painting is very you, and the chromatic palette is very strong. Based on what the painting looks like, I feel like you are pretty much, close to done. If you wanted to incorporate anything, there's a little bit more detail on the face of this guy, for example. I think that's great. I mean, I love the purples right here. There's more variation on those purples.
I had a lot of trouble with purple.
Yeah. It's a hard, because this purple right here, I can tell you it's not done by mixing colors. I mean, this is a purple that he probably had ready, because it's not hard to do this purple. But I just feel like in regards of the composition, yeah, I mean, this feels like very lean. I would just create more of an expansion on the length, because everything falls into the same sort of like noodle thing. So I feel like it's the same. It's very parallel between those two lines. It's very parallel. So I just feel like this has more of a dynamic. There's the sense of the t-shirt being outside. The pants are a little bit thinner than the rest. This area, it's a little bit wider. And I feel like that's something if you wanted to work on, because it's such an important figure, the fact that they take so much, almost 25% of the, I would say, of the canvas. So I would just work on the drawing aspect.
Yes. Okay. That's great. The other thing is this is like a 4x6 painting, I think, feet.
Oh, I mean,
maybe it wasn't that big. I looked at the dimensions, but and I'm putting it on well, I didn't do 9x12. I did a little bit bigger. What's the next size? 11x14 or something.
Okay.
I just had to use an old canvas because I didn't have any more paper.
Good challenge. I think it's a good challenge. Yeah. I mean, if you had any, to me, this is a really successful piece, I would say, compared to what you've done before. It's really strong, and I love the color. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool. I'm gonna go to Laura, if that's okay. And so great work, Frida. I can see that. So I'm curious. So actually, Jen, as a co-host, I think you can do that for me as well. Can you unmute Laura?
Yes, I was. Yep, just about to.
Yeah. So just in case if she's here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura, you're on, sister.
Hi.
Is that a painting? Did you post the painting as well? Let me see if I can find it.
Yes,
Yes, I did. I'm probably the only Mexican that doesn't have a Frida or a Diego in her home. And so I always wanted to do something because everything is so saturated. It's the same old Fridas and same old Diegos. So I found this one that kind of relates to our experience right now. It's called Time Flies.
Oh, wow. Is that a Diego Rivera portrait of Frida?
Oh, that's a Frida.
This is a self-portrait.
Yes.
I've never seen this before. I've never seen this painting before in my life. That's amazing.
Yes, I like it. Yes. Yeah,
Cool.
so that's why I picked her, because I actually was going to pick an Orozco, one of the muralists.
Right.
But it was just too cruel. But this one I think relates to us.
Well, I just think it's amazing. I know that this is still developing a lot. I see that's a lot of like in the very early stages of a wash. So, I mean.
You have the other one. You have another one.
I have another one.
Oh, don't you? Oh, no. Maybe it hasn't.
Maybe this is a little bit more developed. Yeah, it looks like this is a little bit more developed. Yeah.
Julio, if you refresh, you'll see one that is at the end. It's a bit more developed as well. The very end.
Oh my gosh, there's
It
so
doesn't seem to be so intricate, but still, I just wanted to do it.
Oh no, this is amazing. I think, it's a lot of work because I feel, it's just going to take a lot because there are so many elements, and in true Frida fashion, everything comes on the same plane. So there's a sense of everything being equally important. And let's talk about that, because I think it's important to know that even though we talk about visual planes and how to create perspective, so if you see her painting, hard edges all over, hard edges all around. And so there's no sfumato, everything's pretty much, very specific. So this gives us this whimsical kind of like energy. So I feel like with that, you'll have to work with that and then create the same definition basically everywhere. So more work, I would say, 2 hours, but totally worth it. This is a painting that I haven't seen before. It's really fascinating, and I love the conceptual relationship between time and theme and where we are right now. And I can totally see how this resonates with you during this time. Really well done.
Thank you, Julio. Yeah, I feel like it's a bit cartoonish at the moment, but I think that, and this is just like my first notes, so I'm ready for the next.
Yeah, and there's something about the aspect of what things look like at whatever stage. And number one, we have to consider as well the fact that her work is very specific, almost like self-taught looking, if there is something like that. So don't worry about it. It looks super cool, and it's gonna have the Laura effect, and I can wait. So
okay, thank you, Julio. This is great.
Yeah. Okay, so this, Lois, is this whenever you are so Lois, is this your painting or the original?
I can't find Lois.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here she is. Got her. All right, Lois, you're on. Babe.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's mine. I did it the same size. I found a board in the back, and I cut it and I glued it and then dried it with a hair dryer and did it. I wanted something very thick because I've been so fine lately with all these things, and I really wanted it, but it was a challenge. My paint was very sticky, and it seems like maybe it's a simple painting, but it's very complicated, that technique, keeping the black and
right.
Yeah.
So
it's an amazing experience.
So basically this is your own work, and then you're doing a amazing, and I'm so happy.
Oh no, this isn't. No. This isn't my own work. This is
if you keep going up, Julio, you'll see the original.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing artist from Harlem, from 1930. From 1930, from one of my favorite books that I bought a long time ago. There.
I need this book, Lois.
I know. I don't know if it's still in print. I've got to find it.
You may want to check the price, because these sort of like catalogs or artist resume or raisonné, I forgot the French term. They're really hard to come by, and then once they're basically finished, they don't republish them again. And the Harlem Renaissance for me was such a interesting time in painting in America, and what it meant. And the artists, there were a lot of gay artists that, there were a lot of things going on that were really open. So I love the work that came out. I've never seen this painting. So I think it's amazing that you chose this. And this.
Yeah, especially with what's happening today.
Right.
It's always been, I've gravitated to the art, of course, this painting style and this movement and this era. And then after what we went through this week, I just needed to just keep positivity about, everything, and I really wanted to highlight what African Americans have done for our country. They are our country, they're America. So today. When I didn't know what I was going to choose, and then, you know, all of a sudden, you know, just like Lara, it's amazing. This assignment went deeper as usual.
Yeah, well, listen, yes, and I feel like it's important because, you know, on a side note, as artists, we always try to sort of like digest and see how we can um, transform that energy into something. And I know that it's a struggle all to sort of like to do that because we feel we can't and we feel powerless. But I feel like it's so nice that you actually considered representation. To me, this speaks about representation and how important it is to bring up that movement, that time, and also to bring this subject matter. So honestly, I mean, in regards to the painting, this looked like pretty much an original painting to me. I haven't seen that before. So to me, the fact that I wasn't sure if this was yours or if it was the actual artist, I mean, look at those brushstrokes. It feels very expressive. So, and I know that this is different. So I think this is remarkable in the sense that it actually, you challenge yourself to do something different with your strokes that what you've done before. And I can totally see this is.
Yeah. Non-conforming brush strokes. I kept saying that out loud to myself because you kind of naturally want to go the direction of your line. Yeah. And as I observed in his painting style, that's not what he, you know, really, right. It's all over. So non-conforming brush strokes, that is great. Our mantra.
So great. So great that you actually took the assignment to heart and then
thank you
yourself. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think this is done, in my opinion. I mean, consider this basically done because, I mean, if anything, if I have to dissect and analyze.
Just a lot of wet on wet. Yeah, no, do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't change a thing. I think the green is very, very bright, but again, seeing the painting and stuff, I think that's beautiful. I wouldn't change one thing. So, I mean, it's up to you. If you wanted to work on the background, perhaps, but to me, it's just really strong. I mean, if anything, if I can just enlarge this, yeah, I think I can. Oops, sorry. Oops.
Yeah, I put a close-up of the face because that's what I'm going to do next because I was just trying to do, like you said, it really helped. Silhouette. I just kept doing silhouette, and now I have to go back in with, it's
okay.
Interesting the way this painter worked with his black outline.
Yeah, I think because, I mean, this brushstroke right here, I just feel like it's super strong and it may not be as well integrated. But again, I'm just being super analytical, so probably not fair, but it looks super strong. Yeah. Well, thank you. Amazing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great assignment. Good job, everybody.
Okay, and I'm gonna move to Hania. I don't know if she's here, and don't feel like you have to. Present or anything. This looks amazing, Hania.
I'm trying to find Hania. I don't know.
So let's.
Hania.
This is something we're doing news. So it's an opportunity to connect more directly with you. So, but by all means, don't feel you have to talk or present or be there. So if you're there, if you want to say something, that's fine, but you don't have to. I just, if you don't, I will just kind of like go over it really quickly and see what I appreciate and what I love. But don't feel like there's a turn, and when your turn comes, you have to do something or say something. By all means, please. So in Hania's fashion, I just love the way that she spends the 2 hours just working on sketch. There's something so good about that, and I know that I feel really strongly about her process because I know that she takes time later to work on it further. And she develops the process so nicely. But there's something really remarkable, in my opinion, to the fact that her entire 2 hours are dedicated to basically, there's more to it. I mean, this alone, the way it is right now, I would love to hang this in my house right now, the way it is. So Hania, if you're listening, this is absolutely gorgeous. And then the second half of that explanation is that there's a danger in how you go about with the next steps. So be very strategic and very careful, and because you already have a lot. This is a combination of Egon Schiele with, I don't know who else, but it's it gives me chills. It gives me chills. It's incredible. So I don't know, that's her painting, right? Or maybe I'm just talking about this and I'm not really.
Yeah, that's hers, and
That's
that's
her painting. Oh, well,
yeah,
speaking of Egon
that's her
Schiele,
inspiration.
well,
Exactly. I
there
thought
you
you
go.
knew.
So fantastic, good, yeah. And then another part of the process, this is like starting, and I appreciate this because as everyone who's still here can appreciate, it's the fact that it's not super well developed and it's still very stiff in its structure, if I can say this. Hold on 1 second. And then, yeah, as it develops and moves forward, I love how she combs the sketch using very minimal chromatic elements. And then, yeah, that's the palette. And then you get to basically this, which is pretty amazing. Soft and diffused and not super linear. Yeah, so it's pretty remarkable. And I'm just gonna, Dina, if you're here, if you want to, again, I think this is yours. It's okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna. What image did you use or painting? I know that you wanted to go to outside your home, so.
No, this one is no that one.
Oh no! I'm just gonna try to find.
The
I'm
picture.
just gonna basically, yeah, try to find the one that you used as the original. Did you post it? Yeah, you did, right?
Yeah, if you go
Oh,
towards the
yes,
top.
yes. I see it. I see it. I'm just gonna play this. So basically, this is it also Egon Schiele, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Where is this, Dina?
Where it's in a book.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, yeah. I've never seen this one either.
It's
I would say
it's the reason why is because this whole pandemic thing has been terrible for everybody, but I think about the children in particular because this is the title of it is half-grown peasant girl, and you know those young years are so important under normal circumstances, let alone pandemic time. And I think it's gonna affect them forever, you know, how they develop even going further, even after the pandemic's already gone. They're going to be growing up in a society that is more overprotective, and rightfully so. But that's the reason why I love his style. I just love it. And then because of the assignment, I just gravitated to this particular image.
well, I think that's amazing. I'm just going to share yours now. And it's a remarkable image. I love the way the strokes are. I like the darkness of it. I like the way you arranged it. I think it's brilliant. I love the fact that the background is very pale. There's a very dramatic effect in the high contrast of the image. So I think you did an incredible job. And so if I were to dissect and analyze, I love the face. I think this is fantastic. The softness compared to the aggressiveness, if you will, of the strokes on the clothes on the clothes or the garment.
I have to work on the hair and the face. I didn't get to the.
Well, I mean, to me, the face is like really nicely featured in the sense that it has contrast in style. If anything, I would say I would work on the legs and the shoes, because I feel like they're a little bit tiny. In that they're on the tiny side. I mean, if you had more time, let me just pull the image above. I would just feel that could be the area. You know, they're short and tiny, and I think I would just also the skirt. There's something about this skirt that on the original that makes me think of the cylindrical aspect. You know, it's longer in front of the socks or the stockings, and then it sort of like gets shorter. So I feel like I would work on that variation of height. Yeah, if you wanted to. And then on the shoes, there's something nice about the transparency of whatever he used, watercolor, compared to the background. And I feel like in yours is very, very thick and opaque. So consider it and see if you want to work on it or not. But I think that would be, there's something also really incredible about the right side of the image on the original. It had such a speed. It's just almost like flat.
Yeah.
And including the back of the head. But then on the other side, it's the actual opposite. It almost feels like this figure was reclining on the floor, and then everything else was compressed and flat, and everything on the other side was flowy. So if you wanted to regard that when you do, if you do any consideration, I feel like that's something beautiful and dramatic. I mean, I love the way that this is almost like a triangular composition, and it goes from wider to narrower on top, but consider that as well. I mean, and depending on what you use. So I noticed that you use a wash outside and more, I'm guessing, acrylic paint inside. So did you?
Yeah, I use the whole thing as acrylic.
Acrylic, yeah. So because you used acrylic, you have more flexibility in regards of like shaving from the outside. If you felt like you wanted to manipulate the edges, because you have such high contrast that if you wanted to shave something in or not, you could use the lighter acrylic from the outside and then block if you needed to. So
you mean to reshape?
If you wanted to sort of like create, for example, on the bottom, if you wanted to raise the height of this part of the skirt, for example, so it's a little bit less regular. If you wanted to flatten a little bit the poof on the back, only if you wanted to, because you used acrylic, you could. Yeah. There's nothing that I feel it's standing out for me in the sense of like being or needing to be readjusted, except for the legs and the shoes that I would work on it a little bit. Even the face, I think it's really interesting. But if you wanted to sort of like bring because it's the outline that's remarkable in this hyper dramatic scene.
Yeah.
And if you wanted, so
I think that's what you know how you were talking about your original is a different aspect ratio than the paper you're painting on it, and same thing as this. The picture of the book is much taller, so it's narrower. It's narrower and taller, and I fell into that trap where I'm trying to, you have to start basically with the same aspect ratio. Your eye is going back and forth, and then all of a sudden, then I was losing. I love the lines like you were saying, and I needed to block in the shapes. I keep forgetting that, and it should be something that shouldn't be forgotten, because like you say, you go down and then return. Now you're at a point where no return, and you really need to just do the shapes first. And if I did the shapes, then I would have been able to maintain and follow that outline more of a more narrow and more of a narrow triangle shape. And this is a little fatter one. And
no, it's okay. It works. Yeah, it's always an opportunity. So it's outstanding, and I'm finding that this look more like the original than the actual original. So good job. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to move to Sarah Brochure. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm so pleased because this is so not Sarah Brochure. So
there's a new one. If you refresh, I put a new one in there.
Oh, a new one. Yeah. But let me just find, let me just go back. Whoa, this is just stunning and amazing. It's a photograph, right?
Yes.
I mean, incredible. I love the energy, and I can see the connection between this image and what it may represent to you during this time. So there's something really powerful and scary, and I can see the loneliness, and I can see so many things, but it's an incredible image. Yeah. So let me just refresh and go to yours. I mean, working off a photograph, it's a different thing, just because we can simplify. We can use simplification a lot, because for me, it would be not as much about replicating the style, but sort of like almost like interpreting a little bit. Let me see if I can just go back. Oops. sorry, it's just 1 second. And oh yeah, that's amazing. Okay, yeah, so here we are. Yes, so this is the latest one. I love the fact that you chose something that it's so different from what I've seen. And for that alone, I think it's remarkable, and I commend you to have done it and have chosen it. Something so beautiful about this image in the sense that there's so much abstraction built in that I feel it works very well. There's movement, there's perspective, there's a narrative with the birds that I think that brings a really specific or nice sense of figuration within all the drama. I love the color palette, the sense that, you know, all the wires are slightly colored, but the rest is monochromatic. I feel like there could be a little bit more, consider having more of a texture, because I feel like the rest is very based, or the photograph, it's very based on texture. And I feel like this, it's still very much shaped. Like, for example, this area right up here, it just gets grouped together into a single shape. And I feel like that if it connects a little bit too much with the rest of the wire. So
Okay.
this almost becomes a single unit. So I'm going to go back to that photograph, but I'm trying to analyze what I see in just as a single standalone image. And I feel like this, the edge quality, I know that's probably very harsh, but it's also this kind of like band of lighter foamy element. It doesn't feel sort of like integrated with the water. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I know that you broke it up a little bit and it's a little bit sketched or chopped. But let me just go back to the image and see if I can explain this a little bit more. So here's the image, and yeah, so I feel like on the top, for example, there's more variations between the foam and the actual water. Okay. And I feel like in yours, there was more of a continuation. So I would try to, so because it's a landscape really, or a seascape, so everything that's closer right here could be choppier in your brushstrokes. But then once you deal with something on the back, because it's so sharp and there's basically no depth of field, everything is defined or sharp, I would just make this much smaller, chop it up, create more variations, so it really gets pushed back in that sense. And here, I know that it's very much horizontal, but I would just kind of like try to break it up a little bit more.
Okay.
What do you think?
Great, thank you. It's tough. I feel like mine feels too flat. So I think the brush stroke thing might help because it feels like there's no depth.
Well, just work on the brushstroke size. Like, okay. I would work on the brushstroke size. I think there's a slight transition from darker to lighter here that I want to see if it happens on yours. But that could be also interesting to create contrast. I would do it. So to create contrast between choppiness at the bottom and really flat background, create a transition from darker to lighter. So that's going to give you a sense of depth. Okay. And then also it'll be a nice contrast between flat and smooth, which already is, and the rest. So I feel like also this area feels very dark in comparison of the photo. Let me just go back to the photo and see if value-wise you could work. Yeah, I think you could do that. So there's a very strong sense of deep, dark, I would say Payne's gray here. And I feel like here is not as much. I squint my eyes and I feel like the darkest areas are concentrated on this side of the painting. Okay. So I feel like yours has like more similarity between different areas. So if you wanted to deepen this dark and then just maybe leave that a little bit different, I think that could help you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool. Yeah, so let me see if I can go back and I don't know how much. Yeah, so this is Sabrina. Wow, it's Cézanne, a Cézanne, I'm guessing, a Cézanne painting.
Yeah, actually, what's his name, Durand.
Oh, okay.
Like the famous fauvist.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any original art, well, other than my art in the house. And so I started to think back of like posters that I had had over the years. And this was like I had this poster or a poster of this image in my college dorm room. And so it was just funny that it like popped in my head and I was like, I've got to find that image. What was that? And then I ordered some new blues and greens. So I felt like this would be a really good color study to try and play with those new blues and greens. Although the one blue I didn't buy that I thought I did was cobalt. Okay. And there was a section of it where I was like, that's cobalt. I don't have it. So, but other than that, so yeah, this was just kind of my big color study.
Wow. Well, it looks amazing. I mean, I cannot see the original in the folder, but it's okay. I mean,
yeah, there's I have a picture of the setup where it's on. I had to paint it from the iPad because I had to find it online. Okay. So you can kind of.
Oh, I see.
I have the image too. If you want me to just.
I see. That's okay. Yeah, I can see your palette and I can see the image right here. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I can add the image itself because I have it.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm just gonna basically mention the painting. I think I see a little bit of this, and I see that's very Fauvist style, or in the Fauvist style. So that means high colors, high chroma. It's called high chroma, really pigmented. It looks amazing. I think it's just incredible, very Fauvist, and you can even, if you wanted to, increase even more the what is it? The chromatic sense. I mean, make it even more colorful. But I love the variations of greens. This is just absolutely outstanding. I don't know. I think you're also very close to being done in my book. I mean, let me just sort of like acknowledge the fact that you have used throughout the process or the paintings a very muted palette with lots of grays and very monochromatic. So I want to acknowledge the fact that on this painting you went also on a different path and increased the chromatic elements so much. It's so good that you did that, because I think if there was an assignment where you could explore that, this was it. So I think it's just brilliant. I love the grouping, the composition. I love the path. I like the contrast between warm and cold. I love the fact that you have darker notes and then pale notes, if anything, compared with the image that you used. If you wanted to make the yellows a little bit more of a yellow, because with oil, the yellow could really get contaminated. I know that this is a very harsh word with any other colors, but and then it just loses that crisp element, and then sometimes basically just bring another layer of yellow, maybe mixed with a little bit of orange to make it more warmer yellow. That could also make a warm yellow that has a high contrast between that and the greens, because right now it has a green cast, and it almost feels like the same family as the green as the greens nearby it, and I feel like it would be nice to make it crisper. So maybe not now, maybe if you had time, if you wanted to work during this weekend or whatever, and then in 24 hours the paint will settle. Basically you can use a warmer yellow, but that will be my only thing.
Thanks. Yeah, that was true. It was like even just from the medium, from other colors, I kept like green or blue kept contaminating that yellow. So that was perfect.
Yeah,
definitely a challenge.
Yeah, no, it happens. Yellow is a very hard color to paint with, especially with oil, and to make it crisp, sometimes a single session we have to be careful, but you know, yeah. Anyhow.
Thanks.
Yeah, so and Denise, this is wonderful and beautiful, and let me see if I can find oh yeah, this is another version, right? I mean, sorry, this is another version of yours. Yeah, I think
that's my wash.
That's your wash.
Or that's my like sort of middle one, yeah.
And then you uploaded the, this is the image. Yeah, this is the image. Yeah. And let me see. Oh, it's not, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Nice painting. I like the arrangement, and it's very warm, except for the eggplant color. But it's very warm and very simple composition. Table, background, a lot of analogous colors. I could see. This reminds me of the wig painting that you did a while ago when we went to stocking course, color-wise.
Yeah,
So
it's
I feel
bright
it's
like
very
that.
rich.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So let me see if I can see the painting. I love the wash in this one. Yeah, cool. Well, this is like also very good. I think the color is very strong here. There's a lot of contrast. So it also depends on the photo or the image, obviously. But I feel I love the background. It's nice that you create a shapeless, colorful background, so the areas are not they don't feel like they're encapsulated. So that's a nice contrast. I feel like possibly there was more distinction between table and background on the photograph than it is here. So I don't know if it's just something that you wanted to consider, but I'm trying to kind of like give you things that you could work with only if you wanted to. And also I feel like the bottom part, it feels that it's not developed yet. There's a sense of like having the area painted on the table here, but I feel like here it's not being supported. I mean, the whole still life is not being supported. So for me, I mean, my observation will be based on structural elements rather than just chromatic elements. And the fact that I would say the negative space would benefit from a little bit more work. I mean, the rest we can talk about if it's too colorful or not, or but I feel like it's more about the negative space that needs a little bit more TLC.
Yeah, it didn't work on that very much. This is kind of, I was going really slow on this one, so I'm going to work on it a lot more.
No, I mean, you have a lot of elements, and obviously what you
Yeah,
pick.
a lot of colors.
Yeah, there's a lot of objects, so I can imagine that you had to rush through to get basically something on each of the shapes. So I can totally understand. I mean, on the amazing side of it, I just love this vegetable right here. I love the way you painted it. I love the eggplant, and I love the eggplant right here. So to me, the strongest
I can't see
part.
your arrow for some reason.
Let's say that again.
I can't see your arrow for some reason. It's not
Oh.
moving.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, now you can see it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Sorry, I had it paused. So the onion right here, or whatever vegetable or fruit, I think it's masterful. I love the eggplant here and here, whether they are or not, but I just feel like the way they're painted, they're exquisite. They have enough. They don't have to have more.
Okay.
I think that's the goal in regards of like how much work you could develop the rest if you wanted to, but I think that's a good example of stages on your painting that are done.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anything?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot harder than I thought. It's a copy of a copy of Cezanne.
Oh, cool. Well,
I bought it at a thrift store, and then I just recently saw it on the Instagram feed from the Chicago Art Institute of Chicago.
Yeah.
And that's the painting I have.
Awesome. Wow, so cool. I've never seen this one either.
Yeah,
So.
I think it was Cezanne, yeah. In any case, I just bought it like 30 years ago in a thrift store, and I thought it was just a really nice painting. And I was so surprised to see the same painting on the Instagram.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think it's nice that you brought this serendipitous effect. So good job. Yeah.
The reason I wanted to do it was also because of all the colors and all the bright colors, because I can't, you have to be careful not to mix them, which I really want to learn to do.
Okay, separating them, yeah, and making sure that they're distinct.
Yeah.
Well, it looks amazing. You did a great job in that sense. You achieved what you set up to do in that sense. So this was not about making an analogous palette, meaning like colors of the same family, although temperature wise there's a similarity, but I think that it's very good in the sense that you created a harmonious range. So harmonious range, or not maybe that's not a good expression, but sort of like a very representative range of color, So,
Okay, thanks.
yeah, well done. Yeah. This is,
Is that the last one I did?
oh, this is
It's
your
not it.
Darlene.
It's Darlene, but she's got a newer
I've
one.
got another one.
Okay, let me see at the
Should be
bottom.
near Laura.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And this is the Gainsborough, right? Is it Gainsborough or?
Yeah, no, it's people think it is. It's actually Thomas Lawrence, but
Oh,
it
Thomas
was,
Lawrence.
but a lot of people think it's associated with Blue Boy, but it really has no relation.
Okay, cool. Let me see if I can find the original or the inspiration rather than. Yes, yes, I can see. Yeah, yeah. And you have this printed, right? You use this from a print in your
Yeah,
house.
it's the only time I ever bought a copy of a famous painting, but it kind of really grabbed me. It's actually a tragedy because this poor young girl died a year later after this portrait was painted. This was in Jamaica. She was the daughter of English, landowners and colonialists. And she was sent to England for a proper education and got sick. And died.
Wow, I didn't know the story behind it. I think I've seen this painting before, but I didn't know. So
it's at Huntington.
Oh, it is at the Huntington.
Yeah, it's in the same room as Blue Boy.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Interesting. I mean, well, let me say this. I love the fact that I love the colors of the print. So to me, there's something really beautiful in the fact that the colors are different. I mean, that looks like almost like faded. I'm not saying that this is a faded print or photo, but there's something that I really, really like about the fact that this has its own story in regards of color, because they have even on the back on the dirt, I guess, or the ground. I love that this is very cold, and then it almost looks like there is a line here that separates this from really cold to sort of like a warmer version. So there's something that I absolutely love in that sense, how the colors feel faded or altered or sort of like yellowed. There's something that I really liked it. Anyhow, I'm just gonna go to your image, your painting. Yeah, and I love that. Listen, I love.
That's the first one.
That's the first one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so
there's not much difference between it.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.
No, you were right. I think you were right, Julio. The one that you just had, that was the most recent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. The one next to Laura's is the most.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So I love how you approach the sketching. I love that you chose figure as well. This reminds me in a way what you did with a David for some reason. It has similar sort of like neutral palettes, and there's something really nice about that. I love the way you painted the background. I acknowledge the fact that you arrange the figure in a way that gives space around it, so there's no sort of like forced edge on the very top. So I think that's important, and it just leaves room to breathe around it. And I love the color palette, the grays. If anything, I would say I would work on the ground. So I don't know if I would darken it or if I make more of a distinction between what's dirt and what's water. But I love the brushstrokes on the skirt. I think I wouldn't overwork those. I think that to me looks really beautiful, and it's an example of something that doesn't need to be overworked or worked further. So I would, the skirt to me, it's the strongest part of the painting. I would make possibly a distinction between ground and ocean only if you want it. And then in regards of the background, I would possibly try to integrate the strokes a little bit more. I know that there's a lot of contrast on the dramatic scene on the clouds, but I feel like this single separate brushstrokes, they come forward as objects almost. So I would maybe blend some of the edges, or maybe just try to bring a color around it that would feel it has continuity, because you have a stroke here and then you have some ecru, but on the other side, the color is different. So that makes this stand out as an object almost. So I would mostly work on the background to try to unify the surrounding color and maybe fade some of the single out brush strokes. And then after that, possibly, and I know that, it takes much longer than 2 hours. So I'm familiar with your process, and I know that in 2 hours, there's so much that we can do. So I know that this is not to be judged as a final stage, obviously, that it's in progress. But I'm just kind of like giving you a couple of elements or areas that I would work on. The background, and then I would work on the hands, because I feel like if you bring physicality to the arm, then it would just show another layer, because right now they feel sort of like merging or blending with the dress. So yeah, so again, I would say ground, working on the background, and then bringing some physicality to the arms, so it looks like yeah, they're more present. What do you think, Darlene?
Good. I was concerned about the facial features, because one of the reasons the painting itself is so famous is her direct gaze, and I don't even know.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I'm just bringing the image again, because what we're talking about, I know this painting is gigantic, so it's really big, and then obviously there's always an opportunity with a big surface to paint to go more detail. So I think we have to be honest as well about the limitations between our smaller format and how much detail we can fit in. So I think what you got is already great. Oh, and I can see that the arm is not really in front.
Yeah,
so,
see, that's
right. So I would say I would make it clear, so make sure that the blue really takes over, and then this sort of like warm, warmer pink feels like it stops there. But yeah, don't worry about the facial features. In fact, the only thing I would do is probably shave from the outside, rather than just maybe the face could be a little bit more like smaller than what you have, but without taking care of anything inside of the face. Because I feel like if you try to squeeze in eyes and mouth, then naturally you're gonna feel like you need more space than what you have. So I would focus just on shaving it a little bit, so you create more of a smaller face and see what happens inside. So don't worry about adding the pupil or anything like that. I think the shape of the face is more important than the gaze in our case, in your case.
okay.
And I noticed a photo here, and I didn't want to mention it because I wasn't sure. There is a slight, it's not perfectly continuous, but there's a sense of like something continuing from one end to the other end. So I would probably work on that a little bit more on that sense. I feel like on yours, there was more of an uneven edge. And I know that it's not perfect, but yeah, I would say that. And then I see that there's some ecru here, but the ecru sort of like surrounds the cloud. So I would just work on bringing the ecru, whatever color, bringing a continuity on the other side. Also, what I noticed that if I split this on a diagonal layer, I would see that there's a darker section and the rest is lighter. So yeah, anyhow, so I hope that helps. Yeah, and then I think we have Charlotte, right?
Oh, I'm unmuted, so it must be me.
It's Charlotte.
Yeah, oh my gosh, Charlotte, I can't believe you did this one.
I love this painting so much. And I love trying to copy things because it really slows you down in a way. It kind of takes away all the pressure of like even having to try to know what your style is, because you're just trying to copy something, which
Right.
means get some new tools, which is a very controlled process, which is not how I do anything.
Right.
Lots of porridge, no chair. Yours is up there. Oh, you know, it might be a little further down than most because I switched the image. I didn't post what I was painting, and it's probably going to be earlier than this. But
No, yeah. If you go up, Julio, you should find it. She changed it.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, that's a painting. If there's anyone out
so
here, that's a painting.
ridiculous. I
Yeah.
love it
Oh
so
my
much.
God. This is an
Oh my
assignment for
It's
anyone.
Julio's painting, right?
Yeah.
Was it Julio's?
Panicello.
Yeah.
It's my painting. This was an assignment we did years ago. For anyone who's still hanging on, which is surprisingly a lot of people who's still here, this was the perfect example of sizing the paper and then painting with oil over it. We size, and you can see, let me see if I can, you can see a little bit of the sheen on the paper right here. So we use sizing, which is that liquid that covers the pores. And then the idea was the premise was to paint people jumping on pools, basically, jumping on water. So there were a lot of images that we brought of people jumping in a pool. But then I forgot the exact reason why we just changed the background to paper. I know that there was a reason for it, but we brought different backgrounds instead of like the regular. Do you remember, Charlotte?
I wasn't there, sadly.
Oh, you were not there.
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but
I think it was based.
Love this project. I don't think I saw anything else, but I thought it was great. And I love this for the COVID-19 story because the 10 bonanza facts, and the guy jumping in the air and he's got no hair. The whole freaking thing is hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. No, I totally see the association. And yeah, I think, what's the name of that artist from New York? Paul Thek. I think that was the inspiration, Paul Thek, because Paul Thek, he was an artist in New York, and then he painted over newspaper. And I'm obsessed with his work. And there was a retrospective at the the Hammer Museum of his work, and that's how I learned about him. And yeah, he did a lot of paintings basically on newspaper, and I think I combined both that and then the people jumping on pools. So I'm gonna find out if I can. Maybe I can find a newsletter. I'll find out for us the newsletter where I announce this, because that's gonna give us the.
Oh, right. So
Yeah.
in your class, when you did that piece, you said that that looks like a National Enquirer, I think, and then you put sizing on it. Sorry, the guy super looks like a dwarf, a heavy dwarf.
No.
But this is, there was a lot of information to try to make some decisions about in this piece.
Right. No, I mean, it's a challenging piece because you have combined photography and painting, basically. So I think you did an amazing job, and I just love the way it is right now. I love the palette. My favorite part, possibly, it's the guys, the 4 cowboys right here in the corner. I just think that that's done. There's something really cool about that. I love the fact that you actually took time to do the font. So there's something also very interesting about having this deconstructed pictorial effect, and then something that's very graphics. Something really cool about adding fonts on paintings. When I went to art school, I was crucified for doing that in one of my series, and then the professor, whatever, just told me that that's not good. And then it traumatized me, and I felt that was so unfair. And then I learned that there are ways of incorporating it, and not only ways, but there's no reason why we shouldn't. So to me, this is a very freeing and positive picture. I associated with the fact that it can be done, and you did it in a beautiful way. You actually brought attention to it. So I love the pinks and the washed on the background right here. I feel like that's good. If anything, I would say if you ever wanted to take another round, I would concentrate on developing the figure a little bit further, because I think it's so fun. It's so funny. I mean,
it is. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and I would just possibly just bring more detail, because right now you have it built in a similar way as the Cowboys. So I just, if you had an extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I would possibly just spend more time, bring more detail, more highs and lows maybe. So it feels less of a wash. And don't worry about the face being like yeah.
Okay. I really ran out of time because I started late and I dropped my drink and the whole thing kind of started slowly. So the other thing I was a little bit worried about, and I'd like your feedback on this, was I tried really hard to move around the painting because there was so much information. So I tried not to decide up front. Even I didn't put any colors on my palette when I started. All I did was the charcoal, and then I just added one color at a time, which for me is a crazy project because that's not usually how I work. So I only started with raw umber, I think, and the taupe color that we use, which I really realized immediately I couldn't use because I had to start with something dark. So I think that I should definitely work on the figure, but I do think it would be interesting if maybe, and I want your thoughts on this, like the upper left-hand corner, if you go back to the original, is an absolutely fantastic, weird graphic image that's partially photography and partially text that I love. And I think it's like a policeman coming through like a junkyard or something.
Yeah.
Oh no, that is the plane crash. Okay, now I get it. That photo goes with JFK Jr.'s blown up plane or whatever. Okay, so that's the wreckage.
Wow.
It's so cool. So I was gonna try to do what I think. Okay, so because this original has obviously the original painting, which is drop dead gorgeous, and then we have these awesome text boxes, we have photography. I was thinking maybe I would try to do different treatments, which was what you were saying, like my intention was to leave the upper right hand corner in that sort of comic strip way that I did it, and then take the image of the guy flying and really tried to because you painted it, I really want to try to copy it because it's amazing. And then maybe do something in a different style on the upper left-hand corner with that image.
Yeah.
And then maybe behind the guy's left thigh, that other image is really good of that face with the hat coming through.
Man. You have a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot to do, but like I said, I started way behind and with a small tragedy of a beverage.
Oh no. Well, listen, it's good that you have a list of things that you would like to tackle, because this is all about, whenever you have time and an opportunity, then you already have a short list of things that you wanted to incorporate. So don't stress about it. I feel like whatever you said works perfectly. I would say it's always good to take another round, and then it would teach you or show you a lot of things and about yourself and your style and even the painting that you're doing. So it's nice that you have a plan, and then I would say go for it. I would say go for it.
Okay. I like that a lot. That's a great piece.
Yeah.
So insane.
Oh man. So I think you guys, if you think this is a good idea, because I think, let's cap it here, unless there's someone that we haven't talked about.
So there's Sarah that we haven't talked about, but she actually is no longer.
Okay, because that's a gorgeous painting that you did.
Yeah, so it's.
So I think what we could do, if no one else is here, what we could do, let's kind of like close it here. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to organize everything. And then on Tuesday, we can mostly talk about the rest of the paintings, the palettes of the artists, things that I wanted to mention about the copyists in the museums, and maybe just bring the color blue that you brought in, Jen, and talk about the different blues. So we can make Tuesday more of a content-based presenting things that can complement what we did, and then leave less of the session on Tuesday for feedback. So if that's okay with everyone, I think I'm just gonna stop the sharing here. And thanks for being here, you guys. Lois, I'm gonna stop recording right now. I'm not stopping the broadcast, but I'm just gonna